Hello again. This video is about your second speech, your speech to inform. Hopefully, before you've watched this video, you've had a chance to review the assignment sheet for speech number 2, and you're aware of the overall speech guidelines. So let me go over these for you. The first thing to recognize is that this is a much longer speech than your first speech. This will be 6 to 8 minutes long. That means it needs to be at least 6 minutes, but no longer than 8 minutes, or you'll start incurring those grade reductions. You also need to include at least 4 credible sources within this speech. I'm going to cover sources and research in a separate lecture video, but just keep in mind that this is a research-based speech, so you will, whatever topic you choose, have to have at least 4 credible sources to support that topic. There will also be 5 functions for your introduction. We had 3 in speech 1. We're going to add 2 more to this speech. This speech will also now require 3 to 5 main points. So it depends on your topic. Some topics lend themselves to a 3 main point speech. Others may lend themselves to a 5 main point speech. Be aware, the longer the more main points you have, the longer your speech is going to end up being, and you don't want to exceed that 8-minute time limit. You will also need at least 1 presentational aid for this speech, and again, I will cover that in a separate video lecture. You will get 4 note cards for this speech, again, 1 side only, and this is the first speech where I'm going to separate your grade into both an outline grade and your speech upload grade. So you're going to submit an outline first. I'm going to grade that and give that back to you, and that's going to receive its own separate grade. That's 5% of your final course grade. Then when you deliver your speech and upload that, you're going to get a second grade for the actual speech presentation that will be based on any changes you made on the outline that you submitted. Once again, if you have any questions on this, feel free to contact me. Make sure you go back and reread the assignment sheet, however, before you do so. So let's go over the introduction. The first thing we want to recognize is we're still going to have an attention getter. So use one of those strategies that we discussed in speech 1. Your thesis now will be an overview of the topic. This may be more than 1 sentence. Remember, in the first speech, I only wanted 1 sentence. You may have a much longer thesis statement in this informative speech. We're also going to add a new function called the statement of significance. What the statement of significance asks is, why is this topic relevant to your audience? We'll talk about that in a second. And then we're also going to add a statement of credibility. Why are you qualified to talk on this topic? And last, you're going to include that preview of the main points. Remember to use specific language. First, I will talk about this. Second, I will talk about this. Third, I will talk about this. So let's talk about these 2 new functions that you're going to be adding. The first is that statement of significance. So first thing we want to understand is, why is this topic relevant to your audience? Remember, we have talked about audience analysis. So you're gearing this topic, this speech, to your particular audience. You're choosing a topic that your audience will find engaging, relevant. So why is this topic relevant to them? Is this important for their health or safety? Does it contribute to their overall general knowledge? Can they pass this on to friends and family? What will they do with this information? Is it useful to them? How? Use your audience analysis. Again, if this is a topic that's geared more toward a younger audience, you've got to figure out a way to make this relevant to an older audience, and vice versa. I can tell you this is probably the place where I grade down quite a bit on outlines, is because people don't develop a really strong statement of significance. You're also going to create that statement of credibility. Why are you credible to speak on this topic? For the most part, all of you will have conducted research on this topic. So it's important that you stress that you've done research. A good credibility statement is, through my extensive research, I feel qualified today to talk about this particular topic. But you may also have some personal experience with this topic, so don't be afraid to add that in. But really demonstrate in that statement of credibility that you have conducted the research. Again, go back and watch the sample speeches that I will put on the Panopto page so you can see how people are engaged in this, and look at the sample outline that I have on the informative speech module. So let's talk about selecting an informative speech topic. For your informative speech, you're going to do just that. You need to inform an audience. And the only way you can inform an audience is to give them information that they don't already have. So this needs to be new information for this audience. And again, this is why we do our audience analysis. What is new to this audience? If, for example, you decide that you want to talk about frogs. Frogs is a great topic, but most people know what a frog is. They know that it has 4 legs. They know it, spends most of its life in the water. But what they don't know, perhaps, are the number of species of frogs in the world, how frogs procreate. Are there different types of frogs depending on different continents? You have to find a place in your speech where this will be new information to this audience. It also needs to be useful to them. What will they do with this information after your speech is finished? Yes, I may not know about how a golf club is made, and maybe your speech is going to inform me about how a golf club is made, but once your speech is over, what am I ever going to do with that information? I'm not saying you can't choose those topics, but you need to be creative in helping your audience understand, what will I ever do with this information once the speech is over? And maybe it's just to raise my consciousness. Maybe I have friends who play golf, and it's kind of interesting to know how their golf clubs are made. So when you are selecting topics and turning in your topic proposal, the first thing I'm going to be asking you is, how is this new to this audience, and how will you make this useful? Is it interesting to them? Is it interesting to you? The next thing to think about is it objective information? Is it free from bias or opinion? Make sure it doesn't require your audience to take an action or change or adopt an opinion. Don't offer a solution. For example, you might say, I want to inform my audience about the 3 reasons why Donald Trump should be impeached. That, on the surface, sounds like you're informing us about this, but it's really a persuasive speech. But if you were to say, let's talk about the steps by which we impeach a president, and you use Bill Clinton as an example, that's fine because Bill Clinton was impeached, so you're using factual, unbiased information. I also have people who say, well, I want to inform my audience about the problems with the homeless. Okay, so even though you're informing us about the problem, they're also going to then want a solution. And the minute you offer a solution, it becomes a persuasive speech. So make sure it's objective information. We're going to talk about the different kinds of topics that you can choose, but make sure that it's free from any bias. Additionally, can you find 4 credible sources? Remember, your speech has to be based in research. Anytime you're giving us information that's new to this audience, you're going to have a source to support it. Can you use a relevant presentational aid? Make sure you're reviewing the presentational aid video so you have some semblance of whether or not this will be able to use a presentational aid. And can you fill 6 to 8 minutes with your informative speech topic? So here are some informative speech topic categories. For example, you give speeches about people. These could be historical figures. I've heard great speeches on Martin Luther King, on George Washington, on authors, J.K. Rowling, who wrote the Harry Potter books, politicians, John F. Kennedy. There are all kinds of historical figures that people may not know a whole lot about, especially if you've studied them in a history class and they seem really interesting. Speeches about objects. These can be inventions, buildings, animals. Again, speeches on frogs, elephants. This could be the Eiffel Tower, how the Empire State Building was created and built, designed and built. It could be a speech about the invention of the cell phone. It could be a speech about how the Louvre, a museum in Paris, was built. You might also consider a speech about places. These can be cities, countries, cultural locations. So I've heard great speeches on Alaska as a state, on the city of Chicago, and a little bit of history about that. Certain cultural locations, the Vatican. Speeches about activities and events. I probably heard speeches about every single holiday there is. So the history of Valentine's Day, the history of Halloween, history of Mother's Day, celebrations, Mardi Gras. How does Mardi Gras take place? Historical events, the assassination of John F. Kennedy, the build up to the United States involvement in World War II. How did World War I get started? So these are all options for you. You might also do a speech about process, how a tornado forms, how paper is made, how a bill gets through Congress is a process. Speeches about concepts. People don't understand the concept of supply and demand. They don't understand the idea of communism. Nothing bothers me more than when I hear people conflate the ideas of communism, Marxism, and socialism. They're three separate political ideologies. So maybe talk about each of those or one of those to kind of give a sense for your audience of what that is. Religion. A lot of people have no concept of what Buddhism is, or Rastafarianism, or even within Christian religions. There are a lot of people who have a lot of misconceptions about the Church of Latter-day Saints, Mormonism, or about atheism. What's the difference between agnosticism and atheism? Speeches about conditions. What's the difference between a recession and a depression? What are the different types of diabetes? What's El Nino? What's La Nina? What is a bull market? What's a bear market? What is a how does a heart attack happen? Right? So conditions can be a really good option for you. The last topic category we're going to talk about are speeches about issues. A lot of times people will choose a topic and then I'll say, well, this is too persuasive. Why don't you consider using what we call a pro-con pattern? What this allows you to do is to take a controversial issue and offer both pros and cons about the issue. So you're educating the audience about the issue, but you're not taking a side. For example, if I wanted to do a speech on rebuilding the I-5 bridge. There's a huge controversy right now about whether or not we should replace the I-5 bridge between Vancouver and Portland. So the first thing I would do in my speech is explain a little bit about the bridge, when it was built, how many cars go across, what are some of the concerns about the existing bridge. Then I would offer a series of pros, reasons why it would be beneficial for us to replace that bridge. I want to keep it objective. I don't want to take a position. I want to make sure I'm using good, strong research. Then I'm going to balance that with the same number of cons, reasons why we wouldn't replace the bridge. I don't want to include any bias, any opinion. I just want at the end of that speech my audience to make their own decision. Hence, it's informing us about an issue, giving us both sides of the issue, and at the end of the speech we get to make our own decision. This is the toughest thing for you to do because if you're very passionate about one side or the other, it's really hard to hide your bias. So you've got to be very careful if you're going to be doing that. So that is a kind of an overview of speech number 2. Again, I've got 2 other videos for you, video on presentational aids, video on gathering your research. Make sure you've read you've watched the audience analysis lecture video, and that you've gone back and read the assignment sheet and all of the other things that go along with that, the research tools, all of that. So until the next video, good luck. Thanks.